Okay, so this is our sportscasting class. And I know like that's very specific, but we have people who are interested in all facets of broadcasting. So on camera, behind the scenes, we have a few who are specifically very interested in podcasting.
Okay.
And so I thought you would obviously be a perfect person to talk with about that. So I appreciate you being willing to and being flexible today in our technical difficulties. Thank you so much for doing this, because I think we have never had anyone in the few semesters that I've been here speak specifically to podcasting. And we have a few people, a few students who already have their own podcasts and are working towards that. And they're, obviously they have some guidance, I guess, but nothing like what you could give them. So I think that this will be really, really beneficial. So just to kick things off, could you kind of give us a bio, a little rundown of your life?
Yeah. So I was born in 1983, which makes me ancient to you guys. So I started out career-wise, I would say I started out at UPY, and I was a history major. And I got an opportunity to get an internship at a radio station. It was the lowest rated AM station in town, so 50th station out of the 50th market. So I started at the bottom in 2004, but it was honestly a great opportunity because I got to do all kinds of different things, promotions, producing, weekend producing, all kinds of different things. So I worked at WXNT for 4 years as a producer in radio, and that's actually where I started podcasting in 2007. The signal didn't really go very far, so podcasting was a new technology, and Entercom at the time started rolling out podcasting, which is now Odyssey. But that's how long I've been podcasting, and love talk radio, but it didn't pay anything, and I was making like $17,000 a year, and got a job leading the Libertarian Party of Indiana for 4 years from 2008 to 12. And while there, I missed doing radio. My goal has always been to do a talk radio show, and I started We Are Libertarians, a podcast, in 2012, and that is still going. And that was a great experience because we built up a podcast that was really big in the era of organic social media reach in 2013, 14, 15, and was a great communal experience and a lot of fun doing that with friends. And I'm in my podcast studio now where we still do it now. And then left to go work at an ad agency. So I worked at an ad agency for a year as a customer service salesperson. And then I got an opportunity to go work for Bob and Tom for 11 years, which is a nationally syndicated radio show based out of Indianapolis. It's where I met Pat McAfee. If you guys are the sports broadcasting people, I helped him set up his first studio here in Indianapolis and helped him run his internship competition where all of his people came from. So the people that you see on the show, like Boston Connor, they all were interns to begin with. Left Bob and Tom earlier this year to go to IBJ. I'm now at IBJ Media. I'm head of digital content, which is primarily podcasting, but also some video and social media. And my job there and at Bob and Tom was really take the legacy media product and put it in formats on social and video and digital and video streaming, and try to take these legacy formats like radio and newspaper and make it accessible to people in a new generation of media consumption. I'm also on a podcast called The Pat Down with comedian Miss Pat, and we've done that for almost 7 years, which is a comedy podcast, and that's how I ended up on BET. I know, I can't believe it either, but I was on a network TV show for 2 seasons. So I've had that experience too of like being in a network TV show. So I've been around pretty much every medium that you could think of over the last 20 years: radio, digital content, podcasting, newspapers, television at different levels from local to national. And yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions and help you get started. I also run a podcast consulting business and help teach people how to do podcasting and all that stuff. So
can I start really quickly before we open it up to everyone? I do have a quick question with your like very vast background in media. sorry, I feel so weird that I can't see you.
You're okay.
That you can't see me. I can see you. Like, we constantly are hearing of all these things are changing, all these things are evolving. People are looking for the next best thing, like how people are ingesting media. Traditional news might be out the window soon. We don't know, whatever it is. As someone who's kind of, I think podcasting too, you were doing it before everyone was doing it. So it's like very trend setting, if I should say.
It's the one trend I've ever set in my entire life. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But I listen to podcasts every single day. You know what I mean? So I like in totally different ones, right? Like different subjects all the time. So where do you kind of see the future going, especially as a digital content person at such a big, very innovative and also impactful company? Where do you see things heading for students who want to get into media, if it's sports or not? What should they be honing in on skill-wise right now to make sure that they are hireable in the next year or two?
Writing. Learn how to write. Like, even though we always talk about how it's all changing, and it is changing, and everything that I do professionally did not exist when I graduated high school, learning how to write, how to speak well, saying for instead of fur, right? Like having, that was my big, that I got beat up on all the time, because I, like, just learning how to tell a story, craft a narrative, and present it in a factual way, in a clear way, is very important. And so these classes can be really boring where you have to learn how to write a paper, but that is like the single best training for media by far, because it teaches you how to tell the story in a systematic way to somebody that's never heard the story before, and then how to edit that down to make it impactful. That's like the number one skill. The things that are changing are the funding mechanisms and the funding models. But like, what makes a great broadcaster has not changed. It's being authentic to yourself, to your own voice, and gathering a crowd around you. It's just, maybe you're doing that on TikTok, maybe you're doing that on a podcast, maybe you're doing that on TV. But in some ways, you have a much better environment, because when I was in college, you had to go and get into an institution, and there are very few of those jobs. Now you can create an institution. Somebody like Nate Spangle is a guy here in Indianapolis who is creating his own media company. We're not related, but I admire what he's doing, where he just said, look, I love Indiana. I want to tell business stories, food stories, history. I want to do it in this fun, unique way. And he's building a company around that. And that wasn't available 20 years ago. So there's never been a better time to do this work, but it's you have to be exceptional, and you have to work really hard. You have to work harder, because in institutional media, like when I came up 20, 30 years ago, it employed a lot of mediocre. It allowed mediocre people to kind of have jobs as a radio promos person or whatever. But now you have to be exceptional at what you do, because there's less opportunity. There's like no opportunities in radio, really. Like, you have to build a crowd, an audience, and then get yourself on radio. But it's like pure broadcasting. So in some ways it's really good. But writing is number one, and learning those skills of good broadcasting, radio, TV, that's super important.
I feel like that's the best answer we've ever received. So thank you, because I do think the authenticity of being a good storyteller, if you can hold a crowd, whether you're at a party and you're telling a story, or whether you're, on a podcast telling a story, is so important, and it's never going to go away. Like, having that skill, and that comes from writing and reading, right? And being able to see all of those things. Like, I love that answer. I wish I was recording that. So thank you.
I have the audio of it. But Professor Lewis, if I might, I'd say, like, to get ahead in an institutional media environment, you had to fit other people's definition of authentic. Being from TV, I'm sure you've done, hello, that's great, Scott. Thanks so much for doing that today. Right? Like, that's not authentic, but that's somebody else's idea of authentic. And now you can just be yourself and talk about whatever interests you. If you're into knitting, if you're into artificial plant collections, like, you can start a TikTok and you can get millions of views talking about your artificial plant collection. So we really sort ourselves by interest in this day and age, and not by region, not by location, not by family. And so you just take exactly what you're interested in, nerd out on it, and then people start gathering around you.
I'm also glad that you said you're not related to Nate Spangle, because I have been so curious of that, and I just assumed that you were. So I'm glad, mystery solved. I have one more question before we open it up to everyone. But one thing, I love that you brought up those, if you're into artificial plants and you want to talk about that, I always talk to some people about niching down their idea as far as they can, making it diving a little deeper, diving a little deeper, diving a little deeper. For people who are like, I love sports, I want to talk about sports for a living, I want to do this. So many people already do that, right? So when they're sitting down and really trying to think of an idea that they could consistently find content and produce content for, like a podcast or a weekly segment or anything of those nature, what kind of advice would you have to really be able to like keep kind of going a little bit further, niching down, if that's, maybe you think that that's a dumb idea too? Like, what are your thoughts on that whole process?
No, I think everybody in the room is in their early 20s, I presume. No matter what you do, you're not going to be great at it. Like, you kind of have to take the template, apply the template to what you're doing, talk about the Pacers and the X's and O's and the X, Y, and Z's of it all for a few years until you start to see the little threads that you see that nobody else sees. You have to show up, be consistent. Like, in broadcasting, consistency and relevance are the two most important things. Pat McAfee is relevant to you because he talks in the way that you talk, not in the way that SportsCenter talks, right? Like, I like Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. They just are a little bit more of a familiar way to broadcast, so I prefer their show. But, right, so it's relevant to me. And I like that both of these people show up every single day to give me a consistent, it's like making a contract with your audience. So you show up and you talk about the Pacers or IU basketball, and you do the same thing that everybody else kind of does for maybe a few months. And then you start to see like, oh, I've got this different, interesting angle than other people, because everybody else is just they're not talking about this thing. Like, who's doing a podcast right now from the college athlete story on NIL? I don't know of a podcast about stories of athletes who are in college right now and how they're navigating NIL. Right? Like, and everybody's really curious about that, but nobody is carrying that water, right? So they're still talking about what happened on the floor, but there's these human elements in sports, which is why we love sports, that make it really interesting. And so you look around and you go, okay, well, I've got this advantage that Chris Spangle doesn't have that advantage. I'm not in college. I don't know what college athletes there are to have these weird, inauthentic conversations that feel like broadcasting with them. But you as college students may have an opportunity to figure out, like, what does NIL look like for someone who is on the women's soccer team or the gymnastics team or the lacrosse team? You know, of course, everybody wants to start with like D1 basketball and football players, but maybe there's a lot of really interesting stories around NIL that are happening around you that you're not aware of, right? So going back to basic skills, that's your basic journalistic work of trying to ferret out what's the interesting story. Is there a story there? And then who should I talk to about that story? And then how do I write their story in a way that quickly brings me into their world and shows me the problems that they're facing, the challenges of dealing with NIL, right? So just to use that as a for instance. So yeah, there's a lot of, you just sort of, you go back and listen to my early podcast. I was terrible. I don't know that I've gotten much better, but I wasn't good. If you watch please, Camedy. I wanted to say Commandy, but I knew it wasn't Commandy. Camedy's first broadcasts, I'm sure Camedy was not great, right? But she got a lot better. But you just embrace the fact that you're going to suck for a few years.
I'm also glad that you brought up the NIL stuff, because I talk about that, and I have a reporting class where I'm like, NIL, I guess, is normal for you guys. It is so abnormal to us, and it is such the wild, wild west right now still that you could really be breaking down stuff that is so new in the scheme of college sports that you have access to that we don't have access to. And I'm like, these kids are making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where does it go? Like, what else? Who else are they hiring for this help? Do you know what I mean? Like, do they have agents? Yes. Do they have business managers? Okay. Are there blood-sucking ones? Or are there good ones? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things. And in 10 years, we're all going to watch the documentary on all the scams and craziness that some of these kids went through.
Yeah, and it's all going to be built off of the back of the person who wrote a blog on weekly NIL topics for college students, who then wrote a book, who then gets a movie deal, like Moneyball.
Yeah, Moneyball, so good if you haven't read that. Okay, does anyone, before I hijack, this is Chase. I'm going to scooch because there he is.
Hi, Chase.
Hi, Chris.
How are you?
Thank you for the time. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So I am someone who's been podcasting for quite a long time now, like relatively. I started a podcast it was either an 8th grade or my freshman year of high school, and then on and off I've updated how I want to do things, and there have been some breaks in between, so it hasn't been like consistent. But this year is the first year that I've gotten more into the realm of consistency because I learned how to edit a little bit better. And my podcast is a little bit different than yours. I looked up some of your podcasts. They're like, for the most part, like all audio storytelling. Mm-hmm. I've tried to take more of like a video podcasting approach. I have like a million questions, but like I want to narrow it down to like one. When you narrow it down to one is hard.
He's also the one I sent you his YouTube.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I build my audience on audio, so I just focus on that. But video, if you're starting a podcast now, you've got to do video.
Mm. Yeah, I'm trying to do video just because I find that to be what's more entertaining for me to watch. So if it's more entertaining for me to watch, it's more entertaining for other people to watch. But when it comes to creating like relevance for your own podcast, for the things that you're talking about, what to you would be like your biggest, because Camity kind of asked the question earlier about like your own niche, but my thing is I feel like my knowledge is very diverse and I like to talk about all of it and get very in depth in like nitty gritty nuts and bolts, numbers, stats, and then storylines. So like, how do I showcase all that while still getting niche at the same time?
And forgive me, I have not looked at your YouTube channel, but I will.
That's
and
okay.
She can connect us, and I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one with your list of million questions. Please narrow it down to 500,000 when we talk.
I'll try.
If you're talking stats, okay, this is just me kind of flying blind, but like you're talking stats and analytics, quick is best. Get me up to speed really quick. It's almost like that old Sports Center, like here's the headlines, here's the scores. See, back before you were born, you're digital natives, but like to get scores, we had to open a newspaper or watch TV, even back in 1999, 2000. So like that skill of really quickly getting you through the highlights, the numbers, is hugely important in this day and age. Like just give me 30 seconds on a TikTok of what numbers mattered in that game for that particular. So the way that the algorithms, if you're really focusing on video, algorithms are making a change now where it doesn't matter how many followers you have. It matters how well your content tests in a very short amount of time. And so you don't need to have 50 million followers on Barstool Sports anymore to access feeds, because it's so niche. You need to write a solid caption around that content, but they also scan it. And the way it works is if you post a short, a reel, a TikTok, they feed for 10 minutes usually to a small audience of people and they're testing to see if that small audience of 100, 200 people are interested in that content. And if they are, then it shoots to the moon, right? And then they've opened it up to more people. That's why you'll post a TikTok or a reel and it'll just kind of lay there, and then you'll get a like and then a comment, and then all of a sudden you'll get a bunch more, right? So taking some time to really study like what works. If you go on TikTok, you can get how to succeed on TikTok and see 18 million channels on how to succeed on TikTok. And so I think you pick a channel, and YouTube is a great place to do that because shorts are killing it right now. They're trying to feed off of the rotting carcass of TikTok and giving people a ton of reach on shorts. So I think if you're a stats and a numbers guy, tailoring your content to a specific channel and style is a great way to kind of niche down, because then, it's you're niching down in terms of your delivery, not necessarily your topic. So that's a different way to niche down, and figuring like KFC Barstool, the way that he does his reels is universally works regardless of the platform. That kind of green screen, reacting to a viral moment, giving your perspective, like that is an evergreen form of social media content. And he does it in less than 2 minutes, and it's super accessible, but he's very broad, but he's niched down into a style. And so that may be one way that you could try.
Thank you.
Sure.
He'll save the other $500,000 for a one-on-one. Anyone else before I jump in? Was it right this second? Okay, that stemmed from another. Any advice on, I follow all those Barstool accounts, to be completely honest. And sometimes I'm like, y'all sound like douchebag men, just to be completely honest. And then other times I'm like,
some of us are here.
I listen to it all the time, right? Like I'm constantly ingesting it. Being so quick to react to a viral moment could maybe also, I just think that you have to be very intentional, right, with what you're saying and how you're reacting. Any advice to young people in the room on the kind of like watching what you're saying?
The
Obviously,
ethics of it.
Authentic, yeah.
Yeah. The reality of this media environment is that the crazier you are, the more you'll get, right? I don't want to put it in political terms because I don't want to get your professor in trouble, apparently. But I think if we follow political accounts, the more hardcore left or hardcore right you go, you're going to build a base. Like really, it's not healthy, right? You can smash that button. I had a moment in 2020. We had 100,000 people on our Facebook page, and I could post something that I knew would inflame my audience and get 3 million impressions. It was like clockwork. I mean, it was just, you press, what buttons to press after 15 years of working in media. You sort of know. I think that's why the president is so good at getting attention, is because he comes from a media background. He knows instinctually what audiences like. And so he knows what's going to kind of create that viral moment, which is part of his success. What you do with that, I think, is, I just say if you're creating content and you sort of know you're doing the wrong thing, then you probably should just step back and not do it, right? And get more experience and give yourself more time and gain more wisdom. Because I certainly, if you go back and listen to the history of We Are Libertarians in the early days, 10 years ago, I said a lot of dumb stuff. Like I listened to radio shows from 07 and 08 and I cringed so badly at some of the things I was saying, because I had an emotional problem. I had a desperate need for attention, and that to me was the way to like solve all my problems. And after 4 years of therapy, I only need a little attention. But I have found that a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years and in myself, that people who go into media and are attracted to media have an unhealthy need for attention. And it can ruin your life in pretty serious ways because you can't ever really take that stuff back. So I don't know. That particular question is difficult because everything is different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There used to be a very clear right or wrong, but I feel like we don't live in that world anymore, where if it's wrong, it's right to some people. One man's trash is another man's treasure, depending. So, yeah, I grieve some of the things that I've posted and said over the years and wish that I hadn't. And you will probably feel the same way if you're in media. You got to push a little bit, but there's a point where you kind of know this is a screwed up thing to say.
And I think that goes to, again, we're specifically in sports here, right? But there are so many times when sports crosses into that news line, that political line, and it's going to happen. So you need to understand and be intentional in what you're saying, because at the end of the day, it's your face and your voice, right?
Yeah, the thing that I've sort of thought about it lately, it's like from a Christian perspective, it's like judgmentalism, right? If you're constantly judging other people, that kind of content does well online, but you wear out your welcome after a very short period of time. You may build a big audience, but it lasts 2 to 3 years. And so if your content is geared towards judging another group of people or another team, even like how interesting is an IU versus Purdue podcast? Like, okay, 3, 4, 5 episodes exploring the heated rivalry between those two universities is fine. But like after a point, you're like, all right, I get it. They don't like each other. Right. So there's got to be deep within humans. There's this thing that we want to be called to the better angels of our nature. And that is what good broadcasting usually, that's the enduring broadcasting that we love. It's the 1980s Olympic intro of, we fought the Soviets and we won. And that's the stuff that gets remembered, not the stuff that's judgmental.
And then piggybacking off of that and like niching down and all these, being specific and whatever it may be, and maybe broad in some topics. For students who are interested in creating their own content in a podcast realm, would you have, I guess maybe not like a step-by-step, but a way for them to kind of get started, like big idea into, because a lot of times too, it's like, oh, this is going to be 8 episodes. Oh, this is going to be weekly. And to me, it all seems a bit overwhelming. Like, I have like a million ideas. Which one do I go with? Kind of a thing. Any advice on taking that first step and running with it?
Yeah, so I have a podcast about podcasting that I rarely update. It's called Podcasting and Platforms, and it's on YouTube, and you can I've kind of walked through some of this stuff in a lot more in depth. But a lot of time people start a podcast and they just buy like a Blue Yeti, and then they do a show with their friends, and there's just sort of them talking, and maybe it's not that way anymore. That's sort of always how it was. But you're really, the competition for a podcast to succeed is so much harder than really almost any other form of medium. People will watch endless amounts of TV. They'll read a bunch of different types of books. They'll listen to radio even still. But they only have about 7 podcasts on their podcast app. And so your competition is very narrow. And so you have to be very relevant to that person if you're an independent person, or you have to be super high quality. And to be relevant and high quality, you need to put some thought and effort into what you're saying into the microphone. There's a very large podcast out of Indiana that is not sports related. They put hundreds of hours into each episode. Now they have a large team and they use AI and all those sorts of things to kind of make that happen. But finding structure, finding good writing, narrowing that storytelling down, like being really intentional about those things, like maybe putting some thought into the music or sound effects or like sound design of some sort, or upgrading the picture of your camera on your, like, always think about upgrading. Like you always just have to keep upgrading, to the point that I'm in a studio with 4 cameras and lights, and it's kind of gotten out of control. That's what my wife says. But yeah, you have to work a little bit harder because you're young. You don't have an institution behind you like ESPN, Fox Sports. So you got to put a little more effort into it and think about it a little bit more than just turning on the mics and chatting.
Would you suggest podcasting alone or with a partner or a group, or like to get started? Do you think that there's like an easier format to kind of jump in?
I think whatever's kind of easy to get. Now, I'm going to go back on what I just said, right? If you want, I think it's a great there's not a lot of internships like there were 20, 30 years ago. Podcasting is a great internship because you are accountable for keeping a schedule, creating good content, you're hosting the content, you're editing the content, you're figuring out how to build a website, you're figuring out how to set up a camera and make it look good. How do I do live streaming? Oh, I have an audience. How do I interact with them? Right? It's a great learning opportunity that you can do for almost nothing. And so I think it's worth trying a monologue podcast, trying a group of friends type podcast, trying a storytelling podcast with sound effects, like history that doesn't suck, or, trying to make your own ESPN 30 for 30. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think doing it is the important thing. Now, in terms of what catches in people's mind, it's taking the Howard Stern, Bob and Tom, Barstool Universe, Pat McAfee with his buddies talking sports. Like, that's what people want, to feel like they're sitting at the table or on the couch next to you. And so monologue shows are never going to do as well as a group of 2 to 4 people who have a take on a topic and then kind of disagree with each other and represent a bunch of different views. And one of those views is representing the naive voice of the listener. If you're talking politics and you're talking about the intricacies of Gaza versus Israel, like, you need one person on the panel who doesn't know anything about any of those topics to ask the really obvious questions that the experts don't think of. That's a really important part of media. And I just think doing it with a group of people, here's my big pitch on podcasting and why this exists. It is the best way to solve loneliness for people, because you pick a subject you're nerdy about, you get together every week in person and talk about that thing that interests you, and then you talk about a bunch of other stuff. My friend and I talked about marriage the last time off air, right? It's that 15, 20 minutes before the show and 15, 20 minutes after the show that like really builds strong friendships. And at We're Libertarians, we had 3 to 4 people on every episode, one main co-host and me, plus 1 or 2 other people talking about the news of the week from a libertarian perspective. And it was the core of our friend group. It's still the core of my friend group. 4 weddings came out of the friend group over 10 years, including mine. And it's just this great way to like hang out with friends, and that's why what really bugs me about the memes of like, oh, another man talking on a podcast. I'm like, this is actually a really fun way for guys to get together with their friends, and please stop crapping on that.
No, I love that. I should send you a story we just watched in my last class about this group of men in like their late 40s who play a game of tag.
That's fun.
And it's like those year, it's so good. And that's what I was like, this is such a good way to like just keep it going. Like keep your friendship.
Yeah, men especially need a project. Like, guys, we're just not, you all know this, we're not necessarily going to go get coffee with each other. Like, but if there's a shared project, then yeah, we're all in.
You don't want a brunch?
I hate the word brunch. I got visibly upset when my wife said it yesterday.
Sorry. No, do you want it?
No,
you're good.
Answered my question exactly.
Chase is going to ask a question, but you answered it in the last answer. Do you guys want to? I'm hogging it. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to move the camera as we go. This is Caleb.
Hi, Caleb.
Hi, Caleb. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Yes, you mentioned, you've done so many different things with like audio storytelling with podcasting, and that you got your start with an internship with the 50th ranked radio station. So I guess how did you like go about like staying in the industry and like kind of like adapting, because it is a difficult industry, as you mentioned, to get into? Attrition.
Then there's and I don't know how different it is now, but I guess at the IBJ, right? Like if you were a reporter, you'd start out maybe at the lawyer, and you probably wouldn't make a ton of money, and then you just kind of grind it out for years and get better opportunities. I'm not too proud to admit, and I always thank my mom, that I got to live at home for a while, and so that was definitely an advantage, because I didn't make a lot of money. And that's how these industries weed out people in the beginning. You don't make a lot of money while you're kind of getting into the creative arts. But the thing about any kind of creative arts, it doesn't matter what it is, sports writing, poetry, pottery, right? Like drama, being in plays, like you want to be on Broadway, you have to grind it out in community theaters for a while. You want to be in radio, you have to start with podcasting internships and work your way up. you just have to have the stick-to-itiveness to just push through and know that in your early years, I had to work 3 jobs. Like when I was working at the radio station, I was getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the radio station, working there till 10, then going and working for my dad doing janitorial work till 4. I'd go home, take a shower, then I'd go and deliver pizzas from 5 to 10 or midnight. And while you have the benefit of the energy that you have that I so wish I had back, you have to grind it out a little bit, and it makes you just want it more, and it makes you work harder, and it makes you get to a point where now I sit back and I look at my career over 20 years. I got to work at the Motor Speedway. I got to work at Bob and Tom, literally my dream job since I was 8 years old. I've got to host my own radio show. I've got to be on TV as a paid comedian. Like, I never felt like I deserved any of it, but it's just because I showed up every day and kept trying. I was hungry. To be honest with you, dropped out of college in 2005, and knowing that I didn't have a college degree, I do not advise this. I knew that I had to work a lot harder to kind of get ahead. So I think I always kind of had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder and a little bit of an inferiority complex, and that kind of helped too. Not necessarily the healthiest thing, but yeah, I think if I were to distill it down into your advice, like, you're just going to have to work hard for the first 10 years, and you're not going to get what you think you deserve. But then the second 10 years, the second 20 years, like, holy cow, like, I get paid every day well to do exactly what I wanted to do as a kid because I just stuck it out in my 20s. So, yeah, I was asked about work-life balance in media once in one of these kind of sessions at, the University of Indianapolis. They're a little soft over there, not like you Bloomington kids. And I gave that answer, and he's like, well, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I was like, okay, as long as you know, go be an accountant.
It is. I think that's such an important thing to know too. Like, if you get into it and you're like, I actually hate this, like, you can change your mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is okay to change your mind when you're 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. But it is such a grind. Like, you should get the honest perspective. My first full-time on-air job, I made $19,000 salaried and worked more there hourly wise than I did any other job. Like, it is what it is. I lived in the crappiest part of Iowa. I was lonely. I had, the friends that I worked with, but it was like, you're all kind of in it together, which I think was really helpful for me at least, but it is such a grind. It just continuously should get better.
And right? So I don't want to scare you, but I will say, like, to wake up every day, and I have a weird career of being in front and behind the scenes because I learned how to do everything and felt I needed to be the Swiss Army knife of wherever I worked. That really, I could do graphic design. I could do a website. I could do audio and video editing. I could do, right? That really benefited me because other people that you find along the way are going to go, well, I'm just here to host a radio show. I don't need to know how to edit. And then those people, when they get fired, go, how do I edit? Can you teach me? I need to figure out but to be a part of these things that last month I flew down to Atlanta and we had 300 people fly into Atlanta to be a part of our fan meetup. These people pay hundreds of dollars for rooms and tickets and airline tickets and, and then they like walk up to you and go, you got me through depression. I took my mom to cancer treatments and we laughed together at your podcast. We got those kind of letters all the time at Bob and Tom. Like it's, you grind it out, but then in the end, you get to be a part of something so meaningful to so many people on such a mass scale that you can't even comprehend it. Like, you show up and you kind of vaguely recognize their face from being there the last 3 years and you don't know anything about them, but then they know all about you and your kids and how's Matthew and, oh, I'm so happy for you and your wife for this and that. And it's like, that's the parasocial relationship where you are friends with somebody and it's a one-way friendship. Think of the podcast or the YouTube. Let's say you're just a Mr. Beast obsessive and you watched every video of his and you know all about his life and his Swedish girlfriend and when they're getting married. And Taylor Swift has a parasocial relationship with a lot of young women. because they see something in her that they want to aspire to be or love about themselves or want to fix about themselves. There's all these different things, but it's just this beautiful, like, this parasocial relationship is very valuable in meaning. And so, you're not just doing sports broadcasting, you're telling stories of the human spirit to overcome adversity and struggle and to push yourself in a way that fatzos like me, I would never get up. I just edited a podcast yesterday for Innovator Evaporate with Kalen Grayson. He was a Colts tight end, and now he's with the Eagles. And man, just hearing this guy's story and the story of grit and stick-to-itiveness and grinding it out inspired me to do some different things. So being a part of media is just, it's a huge blessing in your life, but it's hard to get into, stick to, but you get to go to all kinds of free events. Like, the amount of free tickets I get, it's awesome. The amount of people I've gotten to meet has been amazing. So yeah, it's worth it. So don't let the hard work part scare you. I would never have done what Camity did and like move every 3 years to a different station. But yeah, you just sort of go, all right, I know it's time for me to leave here. Let me job hop. And job hopping is how you get a better salary in any industry.
Yeah. Preach. And don't let someone act like you're not loyal because you're job hopping. Like, that's just part of it. So
there's psychos in this industry, and they're the problem, not you.
Yes. It is funny how often you hear that.
Yeah.
Wait, we don't have a ton of time left, so I don't want to take up all the time if you have a question. Do you have? No. I am curious from your perspective, especially with podcasting, radio, that. So one thing, I don't know if you've heard, not to bring it up, but the IDS, there were some stories with our IDS, right? But one of the things that I go back to, and I feel strongly about this, and I'm okay with saying it, is I'm a little confused because there aren't like newspaper jobs that these students are going to be applying for, right? It's going to look different than like, oh, we're hiring for like a newspaper reporter. Does that make sense? Like those jobs.
I'd push back on that, but I'll finish your question because
it just looks different. Like it's a digital first front. Does that make sense? Like it's not what it was like with the printed media. And like knowing that is changing, like obviously the writing, like we were saying, is completely important, but getting into something that is kind of like, we don't know what it's like. Who do they reach out to? Like, who do they apply to? Like, where should they look for jobs like that?
Yeah.
Like,
So
we literally had a website called TV Jobs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
there's,
you know what I mean? So
yeah. Like Memo Random has like a job posting. Yeah. The thing about every industry that seems different than when we were in college is that you could get on monster.com and maybe find a job. But Indeed, Monster.com, these things, like, you're just we had hundreds of people apply for a position recently. And so, yeah, there's less newspaper jobs available. There are newspaper jobs. I think if you're going to be in any kind of broadcasting, being a print journalist at like the Indiana Lawyer, or the Indianapolis Business Journal, or the Indy Star, or whatever small town paper for like a year or two to learn how to craft a story and get edited, that's such an important skill. Like being edited and being told you suck at certain things and then being coached is such a great way. That's why so many journalists who start at newspapers or TV end up with great PR jobs, like VP of communications at Cummins and Lilly's making hundreds of thousands of dollars because they started at newspapers. So I think that's a great vehicle. I'm very fortunate that I stumbled into Bob and Tom and getting to do my dream job. But I will say that after a while, it becomes a job. And I wanted to be a talk radio show host on WIBC. And I got too married to that idea that I was neglecting the opportunities I had. Right. So sometimes you just sort of get into a job and you go, all right, this is cool, right? It's like being a digital content producer may not have been exactly how I would have designed things when I was leaving college, but it still has been an awesome career. And so you have to be grateful and have gratitude for where you're at. But I think the single most important thing that you can do, no matter what job you're going to do, is network. You need to. I have a friend, Dave. He hosts a podcast on the IBJ Media Podcast Network, and he spends like 1 or 2 lunches a week meeting somebody new, somebody from a professional circle. Pete the Planner, another podcast on our network. Pete and I met back in 2007 because Pete just got lunch or had meetings with everybody. Like there's, that's how he got a radio show, which is still his podcast now 20 years later, because he just met with me and I said, have you ever thought about a weekly radio show? And we worked out the details and then he got it. And now he's still doing it. And he's got one of the fastest growing companies in the state as a result. So you will feel some trepidation or shyness sending an email to somebody in some vertical that you're interested in, but there's a pretty good chance they're going to respond. Pat McAfee might not respond, but Foxy or Bailey McComas or one of those guys might respond, right? Somebody who works at ESPN as a producer might respond. You might not get, I don't know. I heard a guy named Bob Grand, who ran the largest law firm in the state, super well connected, basically ran the Republican Party, say any Wabash grad who went to the IU law school, email me. I'd love to get lunch with you. Here's a guy who runs a law firm that has a building in downtown Indianapolis. He said nobody took him up on sending an email to get lunch. That's crazy to me. It was crazy to him. So the more people you meet, the larger your network is from the very beginning. It's like exercise. If you exercise every day starting at 18, which I advise because it's a lot harder when you start at 38 like me, your network just grows and grows and grows, and you never know what opportunities come up. My job now that I have that feeds my family, my wife is a stay-at-home mom because of this job. I got involved in a networking group. They said, hey, we'd like to do a podcast. I said, I'll volunteer my time to do it. Let's do it. Got to know the host. He's in a group with my now boss. They were looking for a podcast guy as an employee. He recommended me, and that's how I have my job that gives me income and also lets me do freelance stuff. I'm not asking a boss if I can take an hour off to talk to you guys. I have a lot of freedom. So the single most important thing you can do is networking and then learning to write. That's how important I think networking is when you're your age. Pick an industry like sports talk or news talk or whatever, and just start sending emails to the host. Shoot your shot, shoot big. Who's the ESPN? Maybe she's former ESPN who is on the IU trustees board.
Sage Steele.
She's around. I bet she'd get lunch with you because you're a college student.
Literally, when I was in college, she did that. She came here and spoke and was like, oh, if any of you are ever in Bristol and I had several friends take her up on that.
Yeah.
And she let them in, while she's doing hair.
I got a ton of opportunities because I was the young guy. And so I had that youthful, right now I'm thinking man, where do I find a young person who understands TikTok? Because I'm not that guy anymore. And so youth is your friend in a lot of ways. And in one of those ways, it is reaching out to people who are really successful and going, I want to be you one day. How did you do it? Tell me your story. And yeah, that's my biggest regret in my career is that I started networking at 40 and not 20.
Okay, we have a few minutes left, but I really wanted to ask this one question too. Dealing with rejection as a young person too, trying to get into an industry, how do you kind of stay positive through the hardest ones for me is always just not hearing anything when you're, sending these out. It's one thing to get a no, not at this time or whatever, but to just it go nothing. And you're like, well, should I reach back out? Do I need to do that? Advice on rejection and dealing with it and kind of sticking with it, I guess.
If you heard me list off all the stuff that I've gotten to do over time, it's because I created my own opportunities. I emailed the radio station and asked if they needed an intern. And then I heard of an opportunity at IMS and asked if they needed help. I've looked for spots and tried to create my own opportunity. So I haven't dealt with a lot of rejection, to be fair. The process of leaving Bob and Tom was difficult for a lot of reasons, but one of them was that rejection process. Sending my resume and never hearing anything back. Sending my resume to jobs where I was literally the description. I was like, there's no way I'm not going to get this job, like being cocky and all that. And then never hearing anything. And then, I don't know, but it's that rejection is why I didn't leave 2 years earlier when I probably should have. Because I didn't want to face like, oh, I just don't. Here I am. I feel good about my career, but like also feeling like, what am I really going to do? Like, I'm a radio producer. What marketplace value do I have? Like, I can't go work at this place or an ad agency or that, right? And then it kind of got confirmed a little bit, like, wow, I'm not hearing back. But then the perfect opportunity came up. But you know what? By month 2 of getting rejected, I just sort of felt like, okay, this is not about me. It's just a numbers game. Like, you just have to, the more people you meet, the more shots you shoot, the more resumes you send out, the better the opportunity that will come. Like, I don't think you want to work from a place of desperation. You have to work from a place of confidence. Find the things that you know that you offer to people. Because of my background running the Libertarian Party in Indiana, I organized hundreds of campaigns and county organizations. And that 4 years gave me a set of tools to organize in ways that other media people locally don't. So I can go into the IBJ and organize a new department in a way that other people can't. So that was like, okay, well, this is a good thing about me. I may not be a really good video editor because I'm not. Like, they could hire a way better video editor there, right? But I had to find the thing that I know I'm good at and my selling point and sell that and focus on that and say, I'll find the thing that fits with this, as opposed to thinking about the things that I'm deficient in. I cannot make TikTok reels in the way that you guys can, right? You digital natives. I can't focus on the fact that I'm 20 years older than you in the same job pool, right? I've got to focus on, okay, well, I can organize a department and build a podcast network in a way that very few other people can, and that's what I've got to sell. So yeah, focus on your strengths.
That's I love that perspective of it too. Focus on what you can do better than the average person applying. Sorry, we're out of time, but if anyone else has questions, can they maybe email you? Is it okay if I share that?
Yeah, send them my email, okay. And I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. And you know what? Awesome. I've done this probably 25 times. Guess how many questions I've ever gotten from anybody?
Oh my gosh.
0.
That's so sad.
I know, it's crazy.
That is crazy.
But I know this kid over here, Chase, he's gonna be the exception.
500,000.
He's got a list. He's been typing. No, I really appreciate you being very honest too, because I feel like we got a lot of like rah stuff sometimes, and a lot of it is, but honesty is obviously always, and it's not bad. It's just an honest perspective. So I really appreciate you being transparent. And if you're ever in Bloomington, we'd love for you to come in the media school and hang out a little bit.
I would love to.
Love to have you.
Bloomington's one of my favorite places. I'll go to Little Zagreb's, which is the greatest steak. And forget St. Elmo's, it's Little Zagreb's.
And I'm so excited. I was with Jason on a personal note yesterday. So excited for all the work on that. I can't wait.
I just talked to him this morning.
Good. I told him you were guest speaking. He was like, oh my gosh, he was pretty so good. I'm excited for that one though. But thank you so much. I might shoot you a text when we get done here, if that's okay.
No, please feel free.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.